Okay, so in this video, we're going to go over how I make my trainer blades. Trainers are a smaller part of my business. It allows me to make a blade for cheaper that's a little more accessible. And then obviously it's not a live blade, so it's not gonna cut you up. I try to leave my trainers well distributed in weight, and so it feels very similar to the actual flipping experience, and the people who have used my trainers seem to really like them. I personally really like how they flip, and so that's my benchmark. If I like it, it's good, even though my taste is not necessarily the end all be all. So this is a blank. This is what I make them out of. So they start as this, and then they get turned into this. So I'm going to show you how I get these. These are water jet from a local company. So I just get a big sheet of steel, which you'll see in a second. And then I pull these out of here. Then I prep them for machining and stuff like that. Being that they're already water cut like this, there's very little machining to do. So it's a pretty quick process that allows me to keep the price down on these, because I try to keep these $100 less than the actual live blade variation, just because of how much more time the live blades take to make and how much more expensive they yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so you can see my sophisticated storage areas. These are the sheets I get cut for my live blades. These are S35, they're expensive. I've been through 2.5 sheets now. Each of the sheets is a little over 100 blades, so I've made a few knives. And then this is my ABL sheet for my trainers. And you can see my trainers like this. And so I just have to pull them out of here. I didn't get too many of these cut. I don't make a ton of these. These are a kind of a slow moving item. And so I just kind of restock when I'm out, and I've been out for a little bit, and so I need to go ahead and get a restock here. Okay, and now this sheet is done. Okay, so here you can see the blanks. They cut through, they got 3 holes. And so these are good. I'm just gonna go ahead and visually inspect these, make sure these are all fully cut out. Sometimes they don't get cut like this. So like that sheet, out of I think 60 blades that got cut, like 2 of them were messed up, which is usually about how it goes. So thankfully the steel on these are pretty cheap. I think the steel on these are a couple bucks, and then the water cut is like $5 or $6 a piece. And so I think the total steel cost on these blades is about 10 bucks, which is pretty nice, especially when I'm trying to keep the cost down and keep these under $100. You're gonna see why they cost even that much. Yeah, let's go ahead and start prepping these for the next step. Okay, so to start with, there's a big old burr right here. So that has to go. So we're gonna go to the belt grinder, and we're just gonna smooth these faces down. Then we're gonna go and we're gonna ream these holes to 1/4 inch. And then we're gonna fix it. ABL is what you would call a dummy steel. And so it loves leaving burrs and stuff like that. And so there's gonna be a lot of like dressing to the stock before we can even start machining it. We also have to surface grind it and face it. Thankfully, this ABL is not super oversized. Here, it's not super oversized like the S35 comes in. So it's about 10 thou over, which is pretty good in terms of stock. My ABL comes from, I think, 20 to 40 thou over, which is a lot of material. To remove 10 thou is very reasonable. Okay, so now we're gonna come over to the belt grinder, and basically, I'll turn it on in a second, is we're just gonna come in, and we're gonna take the burr off of this side, and we're gonna take the burr off of this side. Just a really quick thing, and since we're only dressing about 8 of these, it's not gonna take more than a minute. Usually I do a dozen or so at a time, but since I only have 8, I'll just do what I have. I'm gonna go ahead and get one done and then start a timer. So you can see the difference between these two. One of them has that brushed, if you will, texture, and the other one is plain mill steel. And then there's no really feelable burrs on this, so we're gonna go ahead and get the rest of them done. Okay, so I got all these cleaned up and there's no burrs, and so now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna ream out these holes. And so we're gonna go over there and do that. Just because I have these holes cut undersized so that when I'm fixturing, I can fixture accurately off a precision reamed hole. So we're just gonna ream these. It's not gonna be like the nicest ream in the world. We're reaming out of a water jet hole. Okay, so here we are with the drill press, and we got the blank, and so we got a 1/4 inch reamer in there. So we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna run this through. These holes are pretty undersized, so this takes a minute. These are cut well under spec, so it goes through just like that. And then it leaves a nice big old burr right there. You can see that, it's pretty ridiculous. So one of the things that I've really cracked down on is the size of these holes for water jetting. And so I try to make sure my blanks have a much more accurate dimension. So the hole reams more accurately, and it takes significantly less time for me to ream. All right, I've added a little bit of oil to these to probably help with the process. There's that one, and then we're gonna flip this one over so the burr doesn't mess with it. Anyways, that's all 3 of them. So I'm gonna go ahead and start a time lapse. Okay, so I got these all reamed out, and I wanted to get a nice close-up of those burrs that it leaves. And so those have to go, so we're gonna go back to the belt grinder. Or actually, what we're gonna do first is we're gonna take a drill with an old carbide chamfer mill, and we're just gonna rip those off real quick, and then we're gonna go back to the belt grinder, smooth everything off, and then we're gonna go to the surface grinder, surface grind one side. And the reason we're doing that so much is because if we leave these burrs on here, surface grinding is gonna be super inaccurate because there's a burr on each side. You know, this one's harder to feel, but it's still there. So I'm gonna clean these off, then go back to the belt grinder, and then clean these. And then when we surface grind, it should be flat. I'm just gonna go ahead and rip these real quick with the chamfer mill, and then go ahead and yeah, do the rest. Okay, so these are all chamfered, so the burrs are much better. Like you can see, I can rub my hand over here, but they're still raised up surfaces. So now we're gonna go to the belt grinder and we're gonna repeat the first step. Okay, so now it's time to start surface grinding them. And so they're clean, there's no forged scale on them, so they're gonna surface grind pretty quickly and the wheels shouldn't get super gummed up. So I'm gonna take a measurement of how thick this is right now. Okay, so all that processing did very little in terms of the thickness, which was good. And so we still have about 10 thousandths left. So I'm gonna go ahead and line the chuck up. So you wanna slide the surface grind pieces on. This chuck has been dressed, so it's a good, I probably have to redress it eventually, but it's good. So you wanna slide on, keep debris from under it. You know, make sure there's no wiggle on there. And I'm gonna slide on from the back of the chuck area, because if there's a scratch back there, it doesn't make it. And this just helps prevent like dust and oil and stuff from being on here. And if I really wanted to be fancy, I could have a stone and I could stone these off before even putting them on the chuck, but I'm not quite that fancy. Okay, I usually can fit about 6 on, and as we can see, that's about right. If I flip them over, I could fit them more tightly, but you know, whatever. Okay, so now I'm gonna turn on my magnetic chuck. And so this should now be magnetized, very good. And then I'm gonna bring this up and over, set my Z distance, my tripod is in the way. I'm gonna take my piece of paper, I just use a Harvey Tool catalog, they send me one like every 6 months. So I'm gonna bring this wheel down manually, get it pretty close. And then what I'm gonna do is when I get close to it, I'm gonna start moving this under it. And then when I feel it start to contact, I know I'm about 2 thou above my part. And this is how you set your, I'm gonna call it Z. This is how you set your Z dimension. Okay, I can feel it starting to like rip the paper and it's kind of tight, so I'm gonna grab a nicer, cleaner piece. All right, you can see this piece doesn't have like coolant schmoo on it. So we're gonna go ahead and put this under here. Okay, and I can feel it contacting right there and you can see it actually ripped the paper. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn on my spindle. And then I'm gonna move it out like this. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get my back and forth moving. I'm gonna move it over my part like this. Yeah, just like this. Now I know that I'm about 2 thou over my work piece. And so I'm gonna slowly bring it down about 2 thou. I have a little hand knob that I'm just bringing this down like 1 thou at a time. Just gently stepping it in. All right, so it contacted right there. You can see it's a little shinier. So now I'm gonna start bringing it down to 10 thousandths at a time. All right, and we can see we're making some contact. So I'm going to back off, make sure my coolant is running. I'm gonna turn this up and turn on some coolant. Just a little bit right now. I'll turn it up a little more so we're not going over that. Yeah, this coolant is kind of watered down right now. It should, there it goes. It should mix a little bit when it gets running. Okay, so I just went over a real quick pass. It made a couple really small contactors, which means those are all about the same height. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop this down probably 2-ish thou, and then repeat this pass, and we should see most, if not the entire thing, get cleaned up. And then go ahead and drop it 1 thou, and then that is 2 thou. So this is gonna be a pretty heavy cut for this. Because I'm peel grinding, I have to go pretty quick to make sure the wheel is clear, and I'll also run the coolant so I don't dump a ton of heat into these and warp them. So go ahead and get these running. We're gonna get some coolant on, and we're gonna get this moving. You can see it just barely touching that edge right there, working its way over. You can see it's cutting on the edge of the wheel, which is exactly what I want it to do. All right, so it's now just finishing up, and so when it's done with that, we can go ahead and take a look at the plate, and then I'll run the rest of the surface grinding without making you guys watch, as it's pretty tedious. Okay, that is done. So you can see the surface finish on these is quite nice. This one didn't quite go all the way, so I'm gonna take probably another 2 thou pass off of these, as I think it probably only took about 1 thou off. You can see the surface finish is really quite very good. And so I'm gonna go ahead and run these another time, then I'm gonna flip them over, and then I'm gonna run them another time. I have about 7 thou to remove from these, and so it's gonna take a minute. Okay, so the next step is going to be to get these blades loaded up on this pallet. I am currently down a hand, so this is gonna be a little bit annoying. So we get them lined up like this, and then we forget that we have to go in the drawer where our tripod is sitting. So there we go. We now can grab our hardware, which are these little screws. These are precision screws, so the screws go in, and then they have a precision shoulder at 1/4 inch, and then they go over it. So I use these for all the stuff like this. This is just the same process I've done for all my blades in the past. I have at least one video on that, so you can check that out. I do usually use a drill for this, and then just have that set to a torque setting, but I don't know where that is, and I cannot be bothered to find it. It goes in there like this. Since the last video you saw, this is I filmed that Monday. Today is Wednesday, so that happened yesterday. Okay, so now we're gonna line these up. Easier when you have 2 functional hands, but this is actually going pretty well. Okay, look at that. They're all lined up, so now we just tighten this. They don't have to be super tight, we just want them snug. And then since we're just doing op 1, we don't need to take out these inserts yet. They're gonna come out in the next operation. Usually I use 2 hands to hold the other side of this. All right, cool. Now this is set up, so now it's gonna go in the mill. I have some stuff to do, like change the programs, so I'm gonna do that in a few minutes. Okay, gonna go ahead and load the pallet. These pads off. Difficult to do with one hand. Thankfully, it's not a super heavy pallet. There we go. Just kind of get a difference. It shouldn't be off by more than 1 thou or so from that much distance. It's off by 3/10 thousandths, so that's plenty good for what I'm doing. Move this to 2 thou above 0, and then we're going to tell us that this is 1.25 inches off the top of the thing that we're actually locating off of. Okay, I've got everything in there and ready to go. I'm just going to go through a bit of a warm-up cycle where I just ramp the RPM up on the spindle and just get everything nice and warmed up, and then we'll go ahead and run it. So as soon as that's done, I'm going to go ahead and run this pallet. Okay, so things are gonna look a little different than they did a second ago. I just switched from flood coolant to a fog buster. So, as we still don't want an open door. Okay, so the benefit of the fog buster video is basically through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn back on the flood coolant and then just start a normal time lapse again. Okay, so I got these off of the mill and these are looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and look at one close up. Okay, got you. And this one should come right on. Yep. All right, cool. So this is how op one looks. That looks really good with all those nice chamfers and stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip everything over, run the next couple ops. It's just a lot of the same, so you don't need to see it. So I'm just gonna do that, and then when we get heat treat and stuff, I will be back. Okay, so now that the blades are done and machined, it is time to do the heat treat. We have to cut this sheet. So for heat treat, we have to wrap the blades in individual little packets, and I'll show you how I make those and stuff like that. You can apparently buy like laser welded packets. I have never been able to find them, so I'm stuck here making my own, and it's not like it's any cheaper to make my own. This heat treat foil is expensive. I think I did the math on these, and each one of these little squares is like $3. So yeah, not the whole thing, just each one of these. And so that adds up pretty quickly. This is also super thin, and you have to be careful not to cut yourself. Okay, so next I'm gonna grab my trusty reference block, and I only have one hand, so we'll see how well this goes. And basically, we have to take these, and we have to fold them in half like this. Grab this. And we're just gonna make it straight, fold them in half like this. And then I'll just go through the entire making one of these coupons. You can see I didn't fold it perfectly. It's usually better than that. And then we're gonna do, so we're gonna go to the end of the block like this, where there's a sharp corner. We're just gonna fold it like this. Then we're gonna do that again. You need 2 folds in the heat treat. And if you really wanna go over to kill, you can even do 3 folds. Then we're gonna come over to this line here, and not this one. And this is my folding reference, is I basically line this up on the line, and then I fold this down. This is easier and much quicker with 2 hands. And then I fold this over, okay. And then I'm gonna take that down, butt up against that, do another fold. Okay. Down. Okay, now that is the starting packet. And so what we're gonna do from here, so we're gonna grab some talc powder. This is just talcum powder, it's not anything special. And we're gonna take our blade and we're gonna cover it in the talc powder. Just basically put it in here, you can stir it around and it gets all loose. So, and then we're gonna flip it over into the other side. Okay, then we're gonna knock the extra stuff off. And so now the blade is covered in that talc powder. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna keep the blade from welding to the inside of this bag during the high temp heat treat. Because the heat treat is a couple thousand degrees, or you know, for ABL, it's like 1900-ish. I think it's 1975. So it's pretty hot, and you can get partial welds, and it's really annoying. Just grabbing a blade to open up this. Okay. One last dunk. It doesn't have to be perfectly coated. It's not like super important. And then we're gonna tap it down inside of the bag like that. And so that the tip of the blade is just past that right there. All right, so then we have enough room to fold it. And we're gonna tap it down. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna move over to the Arbor Press. And I have these aluminum back foam things. So there's a pretty stiff foam on here, and then this is gonna go like this. And this is gonna go on top of it. And we're gonna press it. Give it a nice little press. Back, press it again. And then what we're gonna see is the blade has now had all the air sucked out of here. Okay, so now that all the air is sucked out of this heat treat packet, and you can see I moved this a little too far back because there's an extra ½ an inch here, which I want here for folding. So I'm just gonna give it a bit of a persuasion. Okay. And then basically what we're gonna do is we're just gonna fold this right here. Found that closed. And there we go. There is the blade ready for heat treat. So I'm going to go ahead and time lapse the rest of these, and so you can watch it. Okay, just got these all done, and as soon as the heat treat oven is done heating up to the proper temperature, I'm going to go ahead and heat treat these. Okay, so my heat treat cell is of course on the floor because I hate myself. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead, it's not the temperature yet, but we'll let it get to temperature with these in it. And we're gonna go ahead and start loading these up. It's nice and toasty right now, but it's not at that close to 2,000 degrees we're gonna wanna actually heat treat these at. It looks kind of cold on camera, and that's also partially because it's not quite up to temperature yet. But it's really stinking hot. Okay, so that's gonna sit. This is a 120 volt oven, so it's gonna take a while to get there. So this is gonna sit for another ½ hour, and then I'll be ready to actually do the heat treat. Okay, while this is heating up, I wanna show you the water blocks I made for my heat treat. So while you heat treat a lot of blades, these blocks get really hot. They're pretty small. I use some 12 by 6-inch plates, but when you're taking 2,000 degrees out of a thing, the general temperature of the aluminum you're heating up gets pretty warm. And you want it at cool temperature to cool it down to room temperature as quickly as possible. So what I have is a huge heat sink, which is all this water, because water takes a lot of heat, going through these blocks, which keeps them cool. And so I can heat treat a lot more blades without having an issue or without having to worry about cooling off these plates. So I just have tubing going through these plates, and then these plates have grooves cut through them, and then they come out each side, and then there's just fittings there, and they split, and then the water goes out there through the pump. And so I'm just gonna grab a blade, I'm gonna put it in here, and I'm gonna drop this down. I'm gonna put some temperature over there, and I can feel this water heat up. I can feel it heat up and then cool back off. I also feel the blocks, they're nice and cool. They're a little warm over here, but you know, like maybe a couple degrees warmer than room temperature. They're not very hot. So let that cool off for a minute and then do the next one. Okay, these blades have now been hardened, and now they need to go through temper. You can see that in the actual foil, they kept that kind of suctioned outline, and you can see the details of the blade while it's still in the foil. Some of them are slightly better than others, right? That is really good. What that means is that it had a nice suction and that no air got in this bag. You do not want air in heat treat. Air will oxidize the blades and mess up your dimensions. Oxidization with heat treat is just basically, imagine really fast rusting. You see that this foil was shiny before and now it's like this. That's just really fast, really aggressive rusting, and it'll completely destroy your dimensions. And some steels, like these stainless steels, these powder steels and stuff like that, ABL is not a powdered steel, but like S35, Magna Cut, stuff like that, it'll completely destroy some of the steel properties as well if you let oxygen in them. All right, grab a pair of pliers. And you can see this is the blade. It's got a little bit of discoloration on the back end there and a little bit there, but I was expecting that out of the not as suction thing, whereas these ones should stay a nice like gray silver color. For temper, they don't need to be in the little baggies. I just usually leave them in as it's easier. So especially if I for some reason end up having to re-harden them, it's easy to throw this just back in the oven without having to change anything. I've never had to do that, but you know, just in case. And this should be somewhere around a 60 Rockwell. When I temper it, should go to about 55. It's a trainer, there's no cutting edge. It does not need to be 60 Rockwell. And so 50, 55 is plenty good for the trainers. Whoops, forgot I was filming a video doing the final surface grind out of Peachtree. I got half of them, or well, the other 6 of them done. And so it's just gonna go through and finish these, and then I'll show you the cleanup process after this, and then bead blasting, and then tumbling, and then they're done. Okay, so I just finished surface grinding the blades, and so now I'm going to go ahead and check the size. Yeah, that's well within specs. So we're going for 0.125. If it's ever so slightly over or under, that's really not a big issue. Yeah, this is fine. About 2/10,000ths of an inch over is the most I'm usually willing to go on over, and this is before the rest of the finishing work, so it'll probably come down maybe a 10,000th of an inch. But that is just about perfect. Yeah, look at that. Okay, so that's good. Time for the rest of it. Okay, so now that the blades are cleaned up, we can see that the tab and the spine are cleaned up from where we don't have clean machine surfaces. And we're gonna go ahead and line these up on this fixture I made for bead blasting. So we'll do one half of the blades on the first run, and then we'll do the other half on the second run. Hopefully the mill isn't too loud. So anyways, now that we have this, we're gonna load it up in the bead blaster and then go ahead and blast everything. Okay, I'm not about to put my phone in the bead blasting cabinet, so it's on the outside and so the picture's a bit hazy, so we're gonna go ahead and throw those in there. I have a whole vacuum system for this, and so it'll suck all the particulates out of here. So I have fresh air moving through a corner there. I have the stuff getting sucked out over there. And so all the particulates are getting filtered out so it doesn't make a, you know, horrific breathing thing. Okay, I'm gonna start by blasting like right there, and so that the blades don't come off. Fascinating, I know. All right, so you can see how these turned out, and all the accessible edges have been cleaned up. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these off. I just grab a random blade usually, and then just flip them like that. And so, yeah. All right, just got all the blades blasted, and you can see that they are now a consistent finish. And the reason I blast the blades before doing anything else is because that gives a consistent base of which to do anything off of. Because say if I wanted to polish this, I would need a consistent surface, otherwise the polish would look weird. So now that I have a consistent base, I can go through and really do anything I want with these. I'm gonna start with tumbling because that's the easiest, and that's usually what I do with these, considering that these are my cheaper option, and I try to spend as little time as possible wasting time on these. So I'm just gonna go ahead and tumble them. That's an overnight process done in a machine, so we're gonna go do that real quick. Okay, so the blades are out of tumbling. You can see that they're looking pretty good, pretty uniform. And so yeah, and then it's just assembling stuff. I'm not gonna make you watch the whole process, but I did assemble one. So here is one assembled. It's not fully assembled. There's like a very small catch on the purple handle, which is why it doesn't sound perfect. But this is what it looks like. Yeah, that's the entire process, and then it's just assembly and stuff like that, which is pretty boring.